When I stop dancing, do I stop being a dancer? When I speak, do I become something else than just a dancer? Do I betray myself? What I've been taught, what I've been trained to be? Is my voice different when I dance and when I don't dance? Do I need to read to see? Do I need to move to feel? Do I need to speak to have a voice? So what you just saw is a solo piece already performed last November in Ohio. And I'm prepared. So this. Good. This solo piece is based on my own experience as an immigrant. Can I call myself an immigrant knowing that as a white, straight, cis French woman, I've never faced discrimination based on my immigration status? This choreographic project is part of a bigger research project on borders and movements that is trying to answer the question, where do the borders perform? But today, I want to unpack that solo with you and try to show the different inspiration behind it. And by doing so, trying to put this solo in line with a long tradition of dancers that try to voice their voice through spoken words, successfully or unsuccessfully sometimes. But what does this need to go beyond the body and use the voice say about the dancer herself? And I'm going to use the female as a neutral gender because there's no reason why we would not do it. A need to voice their voice not as an actor, not as a singer, but as a dancer with a voice. Are those dancers and me implying that dance has a limited vocabulary or needs to be compensated by a vocal expression? Therefore, is this an admission of a frustration? Or is it something totally different? Maybe an admission of a failure in our politics of education that have failed to create tools for our students to actually be able to read dance. An admission of a failure of the contemporary world itself that forgot the radical philosophy at the core of its very existence and became a bourgeois, white, and hermetic genre. So I would like to argue today that there is something profoundly political in the vocalization of the dancer. Political for different reasons. First, female dancers were voiceless for a very long time. In 19th century France, for example, they were kept under minimum wage and forced to prostitution. With this economy, dancers were linked to sex workers, even on a legal status. In other traditions, such as flamenco or Africanist dances, the voice is integrated into the dance as a component of the choreography itself. Since the beginning of the 20th century in Western countries with modern and postmodern dances, eroticization of the dancer disappeared as a systematic prerequisite for the choreographies. And more dancers have started to explore ways to include their own voice into their dance. Political as well because this intersectionality and multidisciplinary approach of dance, adding voice to text, to the body, has created a new genre, performance, as Mickaël coined in his introduction yesterday. But if there is something profoundly political about the vocalization of the dancer, it's also in the use of the I, me, the first person, the dancer herself, as the main voice that voices her own voice. So in order to explore different political uses of this voiced I, this voiced me, voiced first person in contemporary dance, and unpack my own solo and trajectory, I will show you 3 choreographers that deeply influence me and that I find exemplary of new tendencies in dance today. The first one will be Faustin Linikula, Congolese choreographer that you might probably all know, and his ballet Le Cargo. The second example will be a duo between French author Christine Angot and French choreographer Mathilde Monnier, and the ways in which they negotiate both voices on stage. And finally, I will not show you a choreographic work, but a book, Boris Charmat's book, Je suis une école, I am a school, that compiles different techniques used by the choreographer onto his dancers to integrate the act of reading out loud, for example, to the act of dancing. So let's start with first one, Linicula. So we're gonna watch. It's a little, I hope you'll see it pretty well. But, oops. Oh, I need to wait, okay. So while we watch, I want you to try to notice when Linicula speaks and when does it dance, okay? So let's go.
Good evening to you all, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kabako. I am Kabako. Again, Kabako. Once Kabako, forever Kabako. Kabako is my name. I'm a storyteller. But tonight, I didn't come here to tell any stories. I came tonight to simply dance. Over 10 years since I started taking my stories along the pathways of contemporary dance. Of late, I've been wondering, have I danced all these years? Haven't I just spent them telling stories, or at least attempting to tell stories? Have I danced? Okay, that's for sure a very romantic idea of dance. Dance as this entity that would be outside geography, outside history, outside politics, outside this space that we always have to negotiate between the living and the dead. Still, I wonder, have I danced?
So, as you probably noticed, Linicula divides his spoken voice, his recorded voice, and his dance. He never speaks and dances at the same time. Is it because of the difficulty of breathing? And I'm telling you, it is difficult to breathe at the same time. Beyoncé is my hero, just because she does it every day. So, but I don't really believe in that limitation of the breathing. I don't think that's the reason why Linicula doesn't mix all of the layers of the voice. So in Le Cargo, he includes traditional Congolese movements to a clear contemporary vocabulary. In the text that we hear, Linicula explains how he doesn't know what he's dancing or even if he has been dancing all these years. The plurality of choreographic vocabulary he uses in this dance shows the plurality of his own roots, languages, and traditions. It's a plurality that he finds conflicting and challenging, and that he defines as deterritorialized. In Le Cargo, Linicula challenges the idea of a body of remembrance, since, according to him, the Democratic Republic of Congo suffers from a lack of archives. And I quote him, "My heritage is a pile of ruins." He wrote this in a book that you should all read. It's called Moving Across Borders. It's fantastic. So how can his body be a remembrance of a history erased by its colonizers? So he wrote this on the book, Moving Across Borders. I'd like to understand my great-grandfather's perspective on that history. The European perspectives, I have it. Or rather, I only have it. But how do I deal with that other perspective if archives don't exist? In order to dig into his ruins and create new archives, he says that he dances as an attempt to remember his name. So for him, the plurality of the dance vocabulary he uses is due to colonization, and his movement became testimony of this forced plurality of voices. Therefore, not dancing and speaking at the same time, but still use the I, the first person, to express himself in a text he wrote, is almost a critique toward his archives that have been silenced and his black body that was fetishized and voiceless for so long. So let's keep that in mind. Let's move to the second example, okay? My second example is a duo between two women that I profoundly admire. Mathilde Monnier, she's the current director of the National Center of Dance in France, and she's also one of the most influential choreographers in the 21st century. And Christine Angot, an autofiction author, known for using the first person in a very intimate relationship to writing. They collaborated on the piece La Place du Singe in 2005 that explores their relationship with their bourgeois families. They mock bourgeoisie in the piece. At the time they performed La Place du Singe, it was already well known in France that Angot had been victim of incest as a young girl. She mentioned this in several of her novels. In La Place du Singe, she reads a text she wrote while the dancer dances and talks about her own family history. After a while, Monnier, the dancer, starts answering to Angot's text and comments on her story. Both use the spoken voices while using the second language. Angot's second language is literature and Monnier's second language is dance. Similarly to Faustin Ligny-Coullat, Angot and Monnier are bilingual in a way. If we take dance as language, it has also a long variety of vocabulary. But how do they negotiate their own plurality of voices on stage? So you will see that Monnier answers to Angot in different ways, okay? I'm gonna comment while we watch it a little bit.
La lecture est la base de tout. Bibliothèque, ouvrage, le talent par-dessus tout. Œuvre, talent, ils admirent notre talent. Ils aiment les gens qui ont du talent. Ils savent le reconnaître. Après tout le monde, mais quand même, ils contribuent à la prolifération du bon goût en art. Ils sont cultivés. Ils connaissent des vers par cœur. L'entraînement depuis tant de générations. Il y a aussi des ploucs chez eux, des ploucs réacs, mais la plupart ont du nez.
So you see that the author is at a table.
Les ballets,
She speaks,
les tableaux,
and the
les
dancer dances.
découvertes,
So there's a clear
les
separation
pentes,
between the two.
twisties, sotheby's,
Monnier
ça les rend
mimics.
heureux.
And emphasizes some of what Angot says. So now the dancer is speaking.
Alors, mon tort était d'être sortie de l'appartement après lui, alors que je n'étais pas chez moi. Car ça ne se faisait pas de sortir en dernier d'un appartement qui n'était pas le sien, et en plus, de fermer la porte derrière soi.
2 fois de suite.
Mais il était déjà sur le palier. Je pensais qu'il avait les clés.
Sur le palier.
Mais ce n'était pas le problème, parce qu'il y avait cette règle de savoir-vivre.
La danse, ça existe aussi.
Quand on n'est pas chez soi, on ne sort pas en dernier.
So the dancer comments on what
Inversement,
Angot
quand on entre dans un
says, both with a
appartement
spoken
qui n'est
voice
pas chez
and
soi,
with her
on
body.
n'entre pas en premier,
Combien alors?
mais en deuxième, après le propriétaire, qui introduit l'invité à ce moment-là sur le palier de sa propriété
At
et
some
ferme la
point,
marche
even,
ensuite
we feel like
dans
she
le
wants
sens
to
opposé.
argue with the author, and not fall for the text
Ferme
entirely.
toujours la
So
porte
she's
en
really
dernier.
like challenging the text. And even at
En
some
plus,
point,
c'est
she's
logique.
going to make fun
C'est logique,
of
là-bas.
Ongo's
That's
voice.
hot.
That's pretty annoying. I don't know if you noticed that. She speaks like this, but it's pretty annoying to listen to. And she's really make fun of this. So Monnier really makes fun of even the
Être
spoken
engueulé
voice
pendant
of
2
the
heures
author.
comme du poisson pourri.
Okay. So what's interesting is that in that piece, the dancer has more possibilities than the author. And she makes her bilingual skills a strength. Okay, so she can both speak, respond physically with her body when the author only speaks and never dances, not even like tries something. So what is interesting in that, so I take this aesthetic choice as a comment on the fact that speaking is not a skill. You need to learn to write, you need to learn to dance, but you don't need to learn to speak. If you don't have any physical disability that prevents you from speaking, anyone can speak. So why forbid dancers to speak for so long? Why forbid women to speak for so long? By mixing their voices, the two women show the absurdity of this so-called aesthetic choice. The actor used to be silenced in films, then the technology allowed them to include their voice. But we never needed any technology to make dancers speak. It was therefore a clear political choice to maintain dancers into silence. We keep that in mind, and we move to our third example. So I won't show you a dance, but I'll show you
La question du bonheur.
this. Okay. It's the book by Boris Charmatz. It's called Je suis une école. Where am I? So the question he asks is, does speaking and reading, in short, do words influence my way of moving? Okay? So that's the question that Boris Charmatz addressed in his book, and the book comes from a form of workshop he did that was called vocal, where he put a lot of dancers together and he gave them techniques to explore, for example, speaking out loud, or I'm going to show you. So he would write, for example, sentences everywhere, on the floor, under the table, on the ceiling. And so you have to read it and do this, and go up, and go down, and read, and keep reading. And the idea is my eyes. For him, the eye is already doing a little choreography while following the line of the phrase. Okay? So how does this little choreography that my eye is doing, how does that influence not only the comprehension of what I'm reading, but also my bodily interpretation of what I'm reading. Okay? You would also, for example, do things like this. So, honneur, boulette, chou-fleur, lire plus lentement. So it would give directions, orders. Or it would ask you to take this, read. So, je vais essayer d'évoquer 4 exemples de cours particuliers essayés dans mon palais. Tout témoigne d'une pratique qui laisse plonger dans une expression de groupe et un peu comme à partir de l'automatique. Okay, so that's the idea of, did I understand differently because I had the limitation of trying to actually read like this. Okay, so I want you to try all together. We're gonna try a little bit to mix the voice, the body, following some of the exercises that Boris Charmatz suggested. Okay? So you all gonna follow me. And all of you, there's no excuse whatsoever. So I'm very modern, so I'm gonna use my iPhone to do this. Come here. All together. You don't have to be in sample. I want you to start by thinking about a sentence that starts with I. Okay, because you are the center of the dance and you are your own voice. So for me, that would be I left my country precious. We are repeating this over and over again. Okay? So you find your own voice starting with I. For example, what would be your sentence?
Je suis présent.
Je suis présent. Okay, je vais find just to starting with I. All right? Okay. So I'm going to give you a scale between 0 and 10. All right? 0, you don't move. 10, you run. You might not run. 5, it's your walking natural rhythm. All right? Okay. So first, I want you to think about the sentence, but you don't say it. Okay? So, think about the sentence. So we have 0. 10. Okay? 5. Yeah? You get it? Okay. So let's start with no voice. Just in your head. Do you all have your sentence? Yes? Are we good? Alexandra? Yes? Okay. 5. Think about it. 5. And you repeat the sentence in your head. 8. think about religious performance. So, I'm really going to ask you questions. When you started to think about your sentence, just in your head, and not involving, or just involving your body, but not involving your voice, and when you went from that structure to actually voicing your voice, did you understand the sentence differently? Did you have another approach to it? Were you focused on the body? Were you focused on the sound? Were you ashamed to be too loud? Were you proud to be too loud? Did you feel empowered? What was the feeling? Who wants to start? I'm going to point. I'm a professor, so I have no shame of you. You got minutes.
Well, I had the feeling that I need time to manage all the information.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I was always feeling frustrated about not fulfilling
the requirement?
Yeah.
I see.
So
Okay.
I just needed time.
Okay, to process it. Okay, great. Who else?
I don't know if I would put something like an exercise, but in the experience of, no, now I can speak.
Oh yeah, but I said no voice.
Yeah, I have this feeling that I don't know if the body knows that the voice isn't the body. No?
That's interesting. So you mean that you knew you were not supposed to use your voice, but you still did it?
No, I don't know. I just listen like the body.
Great. Who else? One more and then I'll promise.
The problem like her, I think I don't know where it's going with all the other things. That's me. What does it mean body? When you say body.
You are?
I have a problem when you say body. And I can say the call. So this will show this.
So the sound of the body and eyes movements from the sound of the body. Because the voice is part of the body.
Yes.
So it's like, yes, absolutely. Yeah. Great. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you for doing this. So, where did I include my spoken words, my spoken voice to my recorded voice and to my dance? So I have to confess that the first time I did that solo, I was not supposed to speak. I was only supposed to dance on my recorded voice. And I don't know what happened, I just felt the need to speak, and I just started to speak and include my voice. So I didn't feel the need to speak because I felt silenced, like Linicula, for example, which actually I realized it was a very privileged perspective. I never felt silence in my life, pretty much, even as a woman. I did not respond to another voice, like Angot and Monnier, for example, so that was not really the intent. I did not entirely do it as an experiment to push further the limits of my own dance, like Charmatz, for example. So why? So I really tried to understand why I had to speak. Maybe because I stopped dancing for years in order to focus on my research, and I started to write. And I found the process of writing very isolating, and I felt a little bit silenced. So I didn't use my voice, and I was extremely frustrated by this. Maybe also because I'm a professor, and my voice is at the core of my work every day, and I couldn't really exclude my voice from my choreographic practice anymore. So if I use my voice in this solo, it's also because I'm celebrating all these layers of my voices, all the possibilities. It's also because I refuse to fall for an approach of dance that has to be pure, only physical, in order to be real. I refuse to fall for a fear of contamination of the voice, contamination of the thoughts, of the story that you're telling, and because you're using your voice, then you're not entirely just a dancer, a pure dancer. So I refuse to fall for this. Or maybe also because I'm already using different vocabularies, intertexts, on a daily basis. Speaking in English every day in the United States when I'm a native French speaker. Speaking also several choreographic vocabularies. I also speak an academic language. One of my professors in the US said one day, at the university, we all come from different places, traditions, languages, but our common language is theory. And I think it's really beautiful that I think all of us have one common language, and it's choreography or dance or theater, and there's a vocabulary that we use every day that we actually it's a common language. So I don't have any conclusion, so that's the conclusion. Thank you for playing the game. Thank you, that was really interesting for me to see that. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Bien sûr, bien sûr. So I don't speak a word in Portuguese, but you can translate. So. Sure. Whatever you want. Are you tired? I am tired. Maybe you do have a question.
Ouais. Ontem falavas-me do ato da fala na dança contemporânea como também um ato político, seja ele íntimo ou público. Portanto, je te traduis. Esta é a minha pergunta. Hier, tu me parlais avant-hier, tu me disais que le mot, le discours sur scène était un acte politique. Et même si tu as recours à l'intime, ou si tu as une vision quand tu parles, par exemple, en tant qu'intime ou politique, en fait, et l'intime rentre dans le politique, je voudrais que tu parles un peu plus sur ça, sur tout ce qui est, voilà, tout ce qu'on a parlé, en fait.
So the link between intimacy or intimate discourse and politics? That's what you mean?
Can you please translate the question?
Já
He already said it in Portuguese.
É. Não ouviram nada. A minha pergunta é, então... Não? Então esperei.
Oh, sorry, okay, you didn't understand.
Então, eu pedi, porque tivemos uma conversa anteontem e também ela aborda um pouco este tema aqui nesta conferência performance. E ela associava na conversa que tivemos o ato do bailarino falar ou da presença do próprio texto em cena como uma espécie de instância discursiva que remete para um espaço de questionamento político e tinha a ver enfim, não queria explicar muito mais porque ela vai explicar também. Perceberam? Ou é muito... Donc c'est en fait, voilà, c'est l'espace en fait, l'espace de la parole qui est politique sur scène, sur la scène contemporaine, voilà.
Yeah, so maybe I should start saying that I don't think contemporary dance is political anymore, and it's so now it's said. And so that's the discussion we had. So it used to be extremely radical, and I'm kind of like frustrated a little bit because I don't feel like it's political anymore. It's becoming, so we talked about new examples that we actually can see political, like going back inside of the discourse and the choreography itself. But yeah, so we were saying, for example, that now that I live in the United States, I have another perception of contemporary dance. For example, contemporary dance, even if we use the same term, contemporary, it doesn't mean the same thing. So we have modern and postmodern in the US, and contemporary is a mix of a lot of current contemporary dances. So for example, we have house, we have popping, we have hip hop. All of this is included into the term contemporary. And I think it's very interesting because most of those dances, street dances, are born in clubs. So why? Because most of them are part of the African American community. And so usually they don't have the economy to have their own dance studio like this in those neighborhoods or those communities. So where do they explore dance? It's in the clubs. And so that's a totally different tradition of dance that actually, whatever is going on politically in the city or in the nation, they have a direct answer to this, in the sense that they really are. They don't have the distance of having to create a scenography and create and find fundings and to be in an institution. So, and I think that's interesting that the term is the same, But by realizing that the term was the same but it didn't mean the same thing, I realized how emptied the contemporary dance in Europe and in France, I mean, I cannot really speak for all the countries in Europe, but in France have been really emptied of this radical political discourse that it used to be really at the core of it and the very reason of the contemporary dance. So is that the conversation we had? Okay, so that's the conversation we had. But more and more, and for example, there's this choreographer, Nadia Vadoré-Gauthier. I don't know if you're familiar with Nadia Vadoré-Gauthier. The day after the Charlie Hebdo attacks in 2015, she decided to dance for 1 minute every day as a response to the attack, and she calls it an attack. So it's a minute of attack through dance. Wherever she is during that day, she just wants to record 1 minute of a dance, and she puts it online. So that's kind of like a new, and I'm glad that she's actually using contemporary dance to go there, to do this. Because, yeah, I feel like contemporary dance in France has really become something very white, bourgeois, hermetic, and most of people don't understand contemporary dance, and I think it's a shame. Why I think we failed, I mean, I look at you, because I think it's you, but I think we failed, all of us, to educate people to actually be able to see contemporary dance, understand it, transform it into something else, use it as a tool, as a political tool, for example. And I think there's a whole generation, including me, but I mean, obviously, you know, I learned dance, so I'm familiar with this, but my generation doesn't understand anything about contemporary dance. So most of the time it's, I didn't get it, I don't understand. Where do you have the guideline to understand, you know? But that should be integrated into education. Everybody should be able to actually watch this like we watch a movie or like we listen to music. So I think that's what I'm trying to say, that it was depoliticized in the sense that it's gonna get lost if we don't educate people to actually be able to, you know, see it and transform it and digest it. Yeah.
Merci.
Yes.
Micro, por favor, para agora não haver queixas.
I would like to ask you back the question that you asked us about how the movements in the exercise change the meaning of the words. Mm-hmm. Because you have done it also with your performance here, and that's also what you explore. So I would like to ask you.
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. So I think for a long time, I didn't really understand Boris Charmatz. I was like, yeah, right, okay. So, you know, you read like this and you feel it differently. I really didn't fall for it for some reason. But I started to do it and actually, you know, pay attention to what it was doing in my body. And I really, really like the idea of the I, you know, when you end admission of a failure, following the line of the words is actually already a movement that can be read as a choreography. So I really like this. And then, so for this piece, for example, I started by writing the text. I first projected every single sentence, and then I was like, but, you know, you don't need to. And then I recorded my voice, and then I didn't know. So it was a negotiation between my voice, what's too much, what's not enough, what, you know, maybe the text can send something else that my voice doesn't say. So it was, you know, interesting. And then I wanted to do it as an improv, so that was an improvisation for the dance, because everything else was so written that I felt like I needed one space to actually go with the vibe, like we say. But the hardest part is really to include the spoken voice. Because you don't want to, I don't want to have the limitation for my body, so I didn't want to, you know, feel like I couldn't fully dance just because my voice, I was going out of breath or something. So that was really a negotiation that was interesting. But yes, when I say the word, and I focus on the word when I dance, something happens that's absolutely different. If I just said, I left my country by choice, it doesn't mean anything, you know. But when I realized that my body left my country, my whole body, not just me saying it, but this whole body, everything, that's, you know, my voice and everything, we actually took a flight, and, you know, 14 years ago, and we left. And all of this is traveling and crossing borders, and this is a testimony of something for me. So when you accept that a little bit, which for a long time I was really resisting to this, for a long time I didn't like improvisation either. So somehow, I don't know, I felt very vulnerable in improv. And I accepted that vulnerability, and I think that's what makes it so interesting, is when you reach that point when you're like, if I do this, I can't speak because I'm gonna just fall, but why not fall? Let's go, or something like this. So it's just accepting the limitation and make the limitations a strength. And yes, saying it out loud changes something. But this exercise went really fast because I wanted to give you like a large scale of what was possible, or, you know. But so if you take more time, you can, If you take more time, you can actually see the difference in the breathing, or see the difference in what the I says to you. And when you look at, if I look at Martina, like I, so I can be also a challenging voice, and doing like I is different than saying like hi, I don't know, you know, so you can really have, even without doing the faces, which in contemporary dance we love having, you know, no expression on the face, which is very interesting as well. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question. Yes, did I? Okay. Yes.
Micro?
Usually when we think about live performance, if we separate the voice from the body, say in ventriloquism or bunraku, for another example, we find that really strange. So why should it be that we find it strange when the dancer has a voice?
You asked me the question? Yes. Oh.
Big question.
Yeah. So I think it's not strange everywhere. If you take other traditions, it's not strange at all. Actually, the voice is entirely part of the dance. Flamenco, hip hop, for example, you need to speak. If you do break dance, if you don't speak and you don't challenge with your voice, it weakens your skills, you know? So your question is really in the contemporary, dance contemporary. Yeah. I think it's, so, I think I'd like the question, why should we keep it that way? You know? So obviously I don't want to keep it that way, because I feel like the training in France is very divided, for example. So you learn dance, or you learn theater, or you learn music, or you learn singing, or you're a writer. The training in the United States is totally different. You learn everything. Doesn't mean you're good at everything, but you have a little bit of everything. So if you learn to dance at the same time than singing, and at the same time than being an actor, then the approach of your own choreography will be totally different, for example, because the voice is already a tool that you know how to use. And so why just use one piece and not another? So I'm basically selling you musicals right now, but it's pretty much, I mean, you know, it's not, the goal is not musical, but it's the idea. So for them, I think it's interesting to have this variety of skills, and then not allow yourself to only dance if you want to only dance, or only sing if you want to only sing, but have the possibility to actually include more skills. So my ideal version would be to go towards this. I'm not saying that spoken words have absolutely to be part of contemporary dance at all, but I feel like we should authorize ourselves as contemporary dancers to, you know, learn also how to integrate it, and not have to justify ourselves for why we use it. Thank you. Yes.
I'm wondering if there is a voice before the spoken words.
If you what?
There is a voice before spoken words, and maybe words are just shaping the voice, And my question concerns how contemporary dance deals with this. Because I think that there are several examples. Dancers are shaping the voice before producing a text, you know? And this makes some difference between the idea of spoken words. Even in theater, for instance, Artaud made in some way, this, it is a voice basically, and this voice in some way finds its own shape, but there is always a dialogue between this idea of the words and the power of the voice. So it's a comment on that.
Yeah, great. You're totally right. And that actually reminds me of another example. So you probably all know Angelin Prejlocage. I don't know how you... Yeah, Angelin Prejlocage. So he's a choreographer, and he did this ballet, I forget the name, but it was a text from Laurent Mauvignier, who's a French author. La Minute, it's called La Minute. And so it was based on the text by Laurent Mauvignier. So you write that the words come first, before even the thought of a choreography. But what's interesting is that, so on stage you had dancers, and you had one comedian that would say the whole text. And the whole text is one long sentence, like a 50-page sentence. And he would say the whole text. And at no point the dancers will speak, for example. So that was, but at some point, the actor wouldn't dance, but you know, the dancer would like take him like this, and he would have to go on the floor. So he actually has to use his body at some point. But the words are never on the side of the dancers, you know, so when actually the words were first. So it's actually, there's always like the negotiation of the two is very complicated. You're absolutely right. And it's interesting what comes first, yes. It's...
Mais uma questão.
Thank you for your presentation, both theoretical and practical also. I'm interested on language and mediation. So I want to ask you, what is the clash, or on the opposite side, the contamination, when you are improving and you are using your live voice, your live words, and at the same time recorded voice. What is or clash or contamination between both?
Yeah. Thank you.
Do they talk together?
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Or they come from different periods?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a great question, actually. And I think that's why, precisely for that question and that tension, that I felt the need to speak at some point. So, at first, the recorded voice is really like, you know, a music that you follow. So it rhythms my dance, and I really listen to my voice. So it's really me, my voice, my body, and my, you know. So I really listen to my voice as a way to find the rhythm of my dance. But I recorded my voice a long time ago, and I remember exactly when I recorded. I was with that person here, I was in my apartment, and I was, you know, and I repeated so many times, like I recorded 20 times to have the right thing that I wanted to hear. So it was nothing improvised about this. And in some way, what I'm living at that moment is so unique that I felt like whatever I was doing, I wanted to have my voice that's not the same that the one recorded, or at least I don't hear it the same way. And saying it gives a second rhythm to my dance. So it's a relief when the recorded voice stops. It's really a relief. Like I feel like I'm unburdened. Because I try to follow the recorded voice and my own voice, breathe at the same time if I can, and throw one or two movements in the middle. And then my recorded voice stops, and it's like, okay, now I can focus on actually where I am right now. So it is really a tension that's hard to negotiate, but I'm glad that I actually tried to forget about the recorded voice at some point. And eventually, I think even if I do this solo again, I probably won't even have my recorded voice anymore, somehow. So it's conflicting for me to have this recorded voice now, even though it was the project at first. So that's funny that you actually see.
You want to give up that past?
I do want to give up that past forever. Yeah, but that's very interesting because there's like a historicity. There's like for me, it's like when you're bilingual or trilingual, you have these different layers in your head. Like you're thinking in one language, but something else is happening, and you have like all those, Or it's like theory. When someone talks, is gonna say something, and in your head you have like 20 layers of understanding of the same thing he's saying, So it's a little bit like schizophrenic. And so that's the same thing. I feel like there's too much right now, in a way, and I want to unburden a little bit. Thank you for that great question. We good?
Muito obrigado. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you
very
so much. Obrigado.